At the end of September, the weather was slightly cool, and the hour hand could reach 10. Dilapidated abandoned factory building, the only rooftop where you can see the entire starry sky. The wind blows by, rolling up the gravel on the ground, making a noise. "You are amazing, Scotland. You pretended to be thrown out by me and took the opportunity to take my pistol." The long-haired man wearing a knitted hat raised his hands over his shoulders, and his expression also showed a relaxed smile. He said, "I'm not asking you for mercy. Just, before you shoot, can you hear me say a few words?" Opposite him, the man holding the revolver tightly gritted his teeth, his eyes were extremely determined, and he stared at every tiny movement of the long-haired man. Hearing these words, the corner of his mouth evoked a smile that could not be said to be self-deprecating or sarcasm. "I didn't take the gun to kill you." His mature and handsome face was covered with fine cold sweat, but his voice was still calm. "Oh." As soon as the puzzled voice of the man in the knitted hat fell to the ground, Scotland suddenly turned his pistol over and pointed the muzzle at his chest. He almost didn't pause, with a slight pressure with his thumb, he was about to pull the trigger. As the revolver just started to spin, the man in the knit hat rushed over and buckled the revolver. He emphasized indifferently and firmly, "It's useless. Once I grab the wheel, I can't pull the trigger with human power. Give up suicide, Scotland." Scotland squinted his eyes, frantically thinking about feasible solutions in his heart. However, he hadn't figured out what to do, and the man opposite had already said something that surprised him. The senior organization code-named Rye Whiskey looked at him with a very serious look. Then he said, "You shouldn't die here. I am the FBI undercover agent Shoaki Akai. Just like you, I am a hound who wants to bite those guys tightly." Seeing Scotland's eyes widened, his voice gradually slowed down, like a kindergarten teacher taking care of children, gently and slowly guiding, "Okay, if you understand, let go of the pistol and listen to me. Let it go. It's easy to leave you alone." Scotland stared into Hidechi Akai's eyes and smiled bitterly, "You told me your identity and real name like this. I don't know whether you should be naive or righteous. But I'm sorry, I can't give you the same information. There is no way to accept your kindness." "Scotland." Hidechi Akai just wanted to say something, but the movement from the stairs made both people alert at the same time. While Hideo Akai turned around, Scotland pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The bullet penetrated the mobile phone on his chest, sank into the man's chest, and exploded a splendid and strange blood flower in the night. Akai Hidechi stood opposite him, his expression somewhat depressed. He saw the phone in Scotland's chest pocket and the hole in the phone that was pierced by the bullet. "So it is. In order to prevent the organization from seeing the information of family and companions on the phone? The movement on the stairs is getting closer." Accompanied by a hee gasp, a dark-skinned blonde man appeared at the entrance of the stairs. His sight was firmly attracted by the figure lying on the ground. At this time, Shoaki Akai has recovered his former indifferent and calm appearance, and he said coldly, "The traitor should be sanctioned. Is that right, Bourbon?" The blonde man ignored him, but hurried to Scotland. He tremblingly stretched out his hand, trying to confirm Scotland's breathing and heartbeat, but was stopped by Akai Shoaki. Shoaki Akai's long black hair fluttered in the wind, but his voice was extremely indifferent, "Don't move him, Rum will arrange the death confirmation, and someone will take care of it later. This is the gentleman's order." "Rye." Bourbon closed his hands, but his eye circles were terribly red. He almost gritted his teeth and read the man's code name. In fact, he knew without further confirmation that Scotland was dead, and Zhu Fujing Guang, who grew up with him, was dead. "Have you not heard?" Shoaki Akai's cold eyes swept over the corpse. "This guy is a running dog of the Japanese police. It's a pity that the phone in his pocket has been pierced by a bullet, and he couldn't figure out the truth of this guy. Identity. It feels like killing a ghost, which is really unpleasant." After saying these words, Akai put away the pistol and left the rooftop without looking back. Before he left, he hadn't forgotten to remind Bourbon, who was in extreme pain and anger, "You should have not been notified of the execution of Scotland, Bourbon. Don't let the people of Rum see it. You don't need to remind me." The face that has been seen since childhood and is even more familiar than his own face is now completely bloodless. The pale and feeble eyelids were closed tightly, and he would never look at him with those clear eyes again. Bourbon knew that he had to accept this fact, and with the Scottish share, he kept going. When Curacao was ordered by the second in command of the organization, Rum, to confirm the death of Scotland and dispose of the body, there was no one on the rooftop. Curacao squatted down and touched Scotland's side neck. Feeling warm and cold, Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com apparently didn't die long. "Curacao, have you found Scotland?" A processed electronic sound came from the headset. "Yes, I have found it." Curacao took a closer look at the situation in Scotland. It seems that he was shot in the heart and died, but the specific situation will still be known by a corpse examination. The bullet hit the chest. Looked like he was relieved, and continued, "That's okay. The helicopter will arrive soon, and you will bring Scotland back personally. His body can only pass through your hands, understand?" "I understand." Taking advantage of the cover of the night, a black gunship hovered over the factory building. Curacao fixed the corpse in Scotland, stepped on a rope, and followed the helicopter to leave the area. In the shadow not far from the building, Bourbon's face was extremely gloomy. He slammed his fist into the brick wall next to him. Damn it! He didn't even want to leave the body. He held the phone pierced by the bullet tightly. This is the last thing Zhu Fujingguang left to this world, and it is also the only relic that Bourbon can bring to Zhu Fujingguang's family. But, that guy is the one who died. Zhu Fujingguang has always been far ahead since elementary school, and he was even among the best in the police academy. Such an excellent person. Why is it so easy to expose the identity of the undercover agent? And, if it was accidental, then the self who entered the organization undercover with him should also be exposed together, right? Is anyone in the organization deliberately investigating Scotland? For example, Rye Whiskey. Damn, he will never let go of Rye. Definitely kill that person with your own hands. The sky outside the window was gloomy, and the rain continued to patter. "Ah, Dad! Why did you mess up the table again?" Mao Lilan frowned as soon as he entered the office. While throwing the garbage into the trash can, she chattered about Kogoram Mori. "Is there no arrangement in the afternoon? Didn't you say that someone would come to visit yesterday?" "Hey? Someone?" Mori Kogora was drunk, and it took a long time to remember something. "Oh, yes, there is a kid who will come. It seems to be." Boom boom boom. The knock on the door sounded in good time. "Ah, yes. I have an appointment today, and he wants to rent a shop on the first floor." Kogoram Mori rolled up, got up quickly, and even arranged his tie and clothes, pretending to be very serious. "Really, since there is an appointment for noon in the afternoon, don't drink." Mao Lilan mumbled as she opened the door of the office. "Hello. Hello." A soft male voice rang above the front of Morilan, like the spring breeze in April. "I am Nobuhiro Asano. I have made an appointment with Mr. Mori." It was a tall and handsome figure, young, probably in his 20s. He was wearing an ordinary and lean shirt and trousers, but it inexplicably added a clean temperament to him. The black short hair hangs down docilely, and the healthy wheat-colored skin has clear and bright eyes, which are very attractive. He is holding a pure black umbrella in his hand, which is still dripping raindrops. "Oh, you are Nobuhiro Asano. Please sit down." Mori Kogora greeted, pointing to the sofa opposite. Asano Nobuhiro sat on the sofa and nodded to Moriran, who poured tea for him. "That's it, as long as you are willing to rent the shop to me, the rent is not a problem." Ahaha, talking to a refreshing person like you is comfortable. Mori Kogoro seemed to see a dozen beers and piles of pictures beckoning him. But, you know, I'm a detective. Kogoro Mori, I must check the contents of the shop under the office. Of course. Asano Nobuhiro smiled, I plan to use it to open a music classroom. If you are interested in learning music, please feel free to contact me. Music classroom, that's very good. Kogoro Mori showed a satisfied look, when and how long? Is it okay from tomorrow? Asano Nobuhiro thought for a while, and said, I plan to rent for 1 year temporarily, but you can rest assured that as long as the business situation is suitable, I will rent it for a long time. It's just that if this year will pass, then it's uncertain. After discussing the price, Asano Nobuhiro took out 2 contracts directly from the bag and put them on the table. After all, Kogoro Mori is the husband of attorney Fei Yingri. Although the conflicts between the husband and wife are not small, they still know the basic legal knowledge. He glanced at it once and knew that Zinfan had no plans to cheat him, and the contract was very conscientious. That's it. After paying a year's rent and a month's deposit, Zinfan got the key to the shop downstairs. I will hire someone to clean and redecorate from tomorrow. I will ask you in the future, Mr. Maori. He got up and bowed respectfully to Kogoro Mori. Uncle suddenly smiled happier, haha, it's okay, we will be neighbors in the future. Then let Xiolan send you down. Do you want to stay for dinner? Mao Lilan asked. Zinfan smiled and shook his head, I live near here, so I'll just go back and eat. You don't need to keep him. Kogoro Mori opened another can of beer and said casually, a good young man like Asano must have a girlfriend or wife waiting for him to come home. Ah, is this? Mao Lilan was a little embarrassed, a blush appeared on her cheeks, but this is really happy, Mr. Asano, please cherish it. Shinyan was a little startled when he heard such words. Thinking of his house that was so cold that there was almost no life, he suddenly envied the father and daughter in front of him. Although because of the admission of the Reaper Elementary School students, there are cases and dangers every day, but to be honest, the atmosphere of the Maori family has always been great. Then I will leave first, Morrison. Zinfan nodded to Morrison and opened the door of the office. Sister Xiolan, I'm back. Outside the door, no, it should be exactly under the door. A 6 or 7-year-old boy is standing there with his head tilted up. He is wearing a blue suit, white shirt, grey shorts, and a red bow tie, which is inexplicably cute. Shinyan and Conan's eyes met, and he walked downstairs without changing his face. Conan, on the contrary, frowned deeply after a short pause. And many more. That person seems to be Sister Xiolan. Stop him! Conan shouted loudly. Out of love and trust for Conan, Mo Lilan almost didn't hesitate after hearing such a request, so he jumped down the steps and stopped in front of Zinfan. Zinfan stopped, raised his eyebrows and said, Is there any problem, you reading www.yunsha.com Mori sang. That. Although he stopped the opponent without thinking about it, Mao Lilan was actually quite dazed. Facing Zinfan's problem now, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Conan rushed over quickly. He calmly and confidently asked, At 12:40 noon today, you are at the Southeast Asian restaurant on the 2nd floor of the Rice Flower Hotel, right? Xin Fanianyan showed an unexpected look that was just right. Little brother, your memory is very good. It's amazing that you can recognize me only by seeing me once. Hey? Have you seen it today? Mao Lilan asked in surprise. However, Conan shook his head, no, this gentleman should have never seen me. Because I saw him on the surveillance camera of the Rice Flower Hotel Mr. Nobuhiro Asano as the suspect. Hey? The suspect? Mao Lilan silently, perhaps without notice, moved a half step backward. After all, in her past experience, the suspects were all cruel guys with dark methods in their hearts, and they were too dangerous. Looked up at Zinfan again, only to find that the young man who was accused of being the suspect had the same expression as usual, and there was even a slight smile between his eyebrows. There is no tension or any other emotions. In fact, Zinfan did not worry too much. He squatted down and looked at the Conan children. I did eat with my friends at the rice flour restaurant at noon, but the suspect, what is going on? Conan stared at the change in his eyes carefully, trying to see something from it. Brother doesn't know? Not long after you left, Mr. Yashida was killed with a dagger. The person who was eating in the box with Mr. Yashida at noon, you are all suspects, including you. That's it. Asano Nobuhiro's expression did not change at all, and his eyes remained unwavering. What about afterwards? Later the police found other suspects, only brother Asano did not answer the police's call. Conan tilted his head and looked curious. It's strange, what was my brother up to then? There were 9 calls in total. Hearing this, Mao Lilan also guessed a certain possibility. She quietly shifted her posture and position to a posture that could use karate to subdue criminals at any time. Asano's eyebrows are curved, like a moon hanging in the sky, with a calm and relaxed look. No one will think he is a murderer. He said, then the murderer should have been confirmed now, brother? Otherwise, you should call the police the first moment you see me. Did you guess it? Conan put his hands in his pockets, looking handsome. However, this kind of posture is used on a 6 or 7-year-old kid, but cuteness accounts for the majority. Zinfan really did not hold back. He reached out his hand and touched Conan's head. He smiled and said, I just never answer unfamiliar calls, but since you said that, I will pay attention when I go back. Maybe the police will contact me to do it. Take notes. It turns out that the criminal has been caught. Mao Lilan sighed in deep relief. Conan is also really true, it scared me. Hearing Mao Lilan's complaint, Conan scratched his hair awkwardly, because it's really weird that brother Asano doesn't answer the police call. I'm a little curious, what's weird about this? Mr. Asano has been discussing the facade contract with his father this afternoon. Maybe the phone is in silent mode. Hey? Brother Asano wants to rent the shop on the first floor. Yes, I heard that a music classroom is going to be opened. Mao Lilan said with a smile, if Conan is interested, I will let my father send you to learn the piano? Or the violin is also good. Ahaha, no need, I have been very hard doing my homework. Really? Although Mao Lilan felt that Conan and the others had holidays almost every day, she still agreed that children should spend more time out to play, so she didn't say anything. However, until Nobuhiro Asano disappeared on the corner of the first floor under an umbrella, disappeared into the rushing crowd on the road, disappeared into the growing darkness, Conan's serious and cautious expression still did not relax at all. Because that man is so strange. Normal people learned that a friend who had only eaten with them at noon was killed. The murderer is most likely the person sitting next to him. Should this be the reaction? It's as if he already knew about it. So, in other words, did Nobuhiro Asano deliberately not answer the call from the police? Nobuhiro left the Maori office and walked towards a high-end apartment nearby. At the same time, he turned on the phone and entered a string of numbers. Not long after, the call was answered by the other party. An indifferent low voice came into the pinna from the earpiece. Solved. Nobuhiro's voice has become cold, his tone does not fluctuate at all. Of course, I used a little trick to get Saburo Yashida's students to kill him. No one will link his death to the organization. Good job. The other party seemed to be the kind of person who cherishes words like gold. Hearing Zinfan's words, he only gave a faint comment that was pretty good. But Zinfan is used to it. Speaking of which, this was originally your task, Jin. I put the bounty on your account. But my time is precious. When he said this, Xin Fan was stopping by the street tree, staring at the traffic in a daze. There was a pause for 2 seconds. I planned to deal with a batch of mice recently, and Akimi Miyano is one of them. Zinfan's forehead twitched slightly, he raised his hand dumbly to cover the raindrops floating in the umbrella. Ha! So have organizations now begin to use the quantifier critic to describe undercover agents and traitors? Besides, Jin is changing the subject, right? Although he had already seen through the guy who was face paralyzed besides the smirk, Xinyan could only pretend that he hadn't heard anything and was consciously changed the subject. Well, I'm in Japan, if you have anything to contact me. He pretended to rack his brain to remember, and asked, it's just that Miyano Akimi is a traitor. Probably not, but she and Akai Hide-ichi are lovers. Jin paused, and explained, you know Akai Hide-ichi, the FBI undercover running dog in the organization. Although according to the investigation, he has not left the organization since he left the organization. I have contacted Akimi Miyano, but still do not rule out the possibility of secret contact. I see, I would rather kill by mistake than let it go, right? That's it. You can also participate. No interest. Before the Jin was finished, Shin Shige refused, I came to Japan on vacation, and I was arrested as a laborer for no reason. Even if he was really interested in Miyano Akimi, he couldn't agree at this time. After all, the Jin was rejected and he was not angry. He snorted and said, that's right. You are the gentleman who transferred from Northern Europe to Japan. Although I don't know what you are going to do, I am alone in dealing with things like mice. Will suffice. Then, goodbye. Xin Fan said that he was about to hang up. However, Jin added at the end, I am in charge of Japan. You'd better not be caught by me, Mezcal. Xinyan laughed, and he said coldly, do you always like to treat everyone as a traitor? Jinjiu didn't reply, so he hung up the phone. It's not that Mezcal is suspected, but he knows a little bit about the other members. Only this guy seems to appear suddenly, and he also holds many secrets in the organization that he doesn't even know. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. If you don't try vigilantly a few times, Jin really can't rest assured. Zinfan puts away his cell phone, turns around and enters the apartment building, and presses the elevator. This is a high-end apartment building located in the 11th district of 5-CHOME, Yanihuako, Tokyo. It has a total of 27 floors, and Shinchich's house is on the top floor. Standing in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, you can see the entire city of Tokyo. When he got home and changed his slippers, Zinfan habitually picked a bottle of Scotch whiskey and poured himself half a glass before sitting lazily on the recliner to watch the scenery while holding the glass. At moments like this, he always forgets that he actually traveled from another world, and where he is now in that world, it is just a manga, an anime. It has been 29 years after all. 29 years is enough time for him to become a king, a Scotch whiskey, and a mezcal. In such an original book, the man who only lives in the memory who has not even participated in the main plot, the only thing that can be remembered by the reader is his death that made Rei Noria and Hideo Akai counterintuitively. However, the truth of the death is that the organization boss personally planned the scene to allow his loyal subordinates to leave Scotland and secretly join a mysterious plan. Since that day, Scotch whiskey has died, but there has been a trusted mezcal in the organization. Zhu Fujingguang died, but the Japanese police had an extra nail deeply embedded in the criminal group. It's just that, let you alone carry the dream of the five of us. Zinfan sighed silently, I still feel sorry for you anyway. His death should be a big blow to the unknowing Zhang Guling. Japanese renovation workers are very efficient, as long as they pay enough commissions, they can quickly complete the employer's requirements. Nobuhiro just went to the shop in the morning to take a look, and then safely handed over the work to the workers. Next is the question of the music classroom teacher. He himself has an excellent bass level, enough to be a teacher, and even piano he can teach students. But as a music classroom, it is better to have a wider range. Posted an advertisement for part-time job recruitment at the entrance of the music classroom, and went to the music school in person, but the recruitment process was slow. I don't know if these people who study music are more detached. As a part-time HR boss, Zinfan often feels that they can't keep up with their thinking. The only thing that made him feel good was a violin teacher, her name is also very nice, called Matsumoto Sachiko. Are all music teachers? I don't know if she has anything to do with Sayuri Matsumoto. Then the next step is. Zinfan turned on his phone and turned to the latest email, Qinggang Biotechnology Co., Limited. If the gentleman asked him to participate in the research of APTX series of drugs, then this Aoka should be the research center where Shihome Yano is now. Now that Jin has started to deal with Akimi Miyano, it is estimated that it will be a 1 billion yen robbery in the near future, which means that Shihome Yano will soon become a child. It's still at the beginning of the plot. Then go and meet Miss Shihome Yano, who is known as the genius scientist of the organization. Zinfan took out the tools for easy touse, and smashed his face in the mirror for a long time, then put on a brown wig, and finally put a mole on the corner of his left eye. It's perfect. Although the body shape has not changed, and the face shape has only been slightly processed, anyone who is familiar with Asano Nobuhira will find it difficult to connect them together when he sees this face. Driving his silver Maserati sports car, Zinfan galloped towards Qinggang Biotechnology Co., Ltd. As expected, the car was stopped as soon as it reached the entrance of the underground parking lot. After scanning, the system automatically confirmed the identity of the visitor, and then the roadblock was opened and the entrance was let out. Zinfan parked the car close to the elevator, swiped the elevator with his ID card, all the way to the laboratory on the 9th floor. Occasionally there will be scientific researchers passing by with test samples in the corridor. These people are wearing white lab coats and look calm. Seeing Zinfan, people occasionally nod to him, but most of them just ignore it as if they didn't see it. Zinfan walked to the 909 laboratory according to the address marked on the email. This is a super experimental platform that occupies almost half a floor. There are about a dozen researchers in it, and Shihome Yano's brown curly hair is obvious in it. She is lowering her head to adjust the microscope, and the computer screen next to her is showing the scene under the microscope. It can be seen that there are some red blood cells. It's just that the state of these cells is very strange, a bit like a sickle shape, but they are degenerating and disappearing at a strange speed. This is human red blood cells, right? That drug has already been tested in humans. Miyano Shiho is focusing on debugging the microscope. She wants to see the details of the changes in the red blood cells, but she can't target one of them, because the cells degenerate too quickly. Suddenly hearing an unfamiliar voice sounded behind her, Shihome Yano's first reaction was angry. APTX is still very unstable, how can it be given to someone for experimentation? She turned her head angrily, and wanted to see which researcher it was. It's so cruel, even human experimentation would be thought of. However, the face that came into view was very strange. Although he was wearing a denim casual outfit, it seemed harmless, but the breath on his body made Miyano Shiho feel trembling and familiar. Obviously, this is a member of an unfamiliar organization, and most likely it is from the action group. Danger level A+. Thinking of this, Shihome Yano subconsciously stepped back half a step, widening the distance between the two. Staring at the guy warily, he asked in a cold voice, "Who are you?" Shin Shige thinks that the smile on his face should be sincere and harmless. If Shihome Yano feels dangerous like this, then he can do nothing. So Shinyan narrowed his smile, restored his calm tone, and said calmly, "You are Shihome Yano, I need to call a part of APTX's core information. All the research and development data of APTX series of drugs, except for the backup in the organization's headquarters computer, only this research center can provide. In order to minimize the influence of traitors or undercover agents on the organization, all core information must be retrieved by 2 or more members with the highest authority. All arbitrary access will be judged as leaked by the system, and the data will be cleaned up immediately. Is like the research materials that Shiho Miyano sent to Akimi Miyano on the disk in the original work. It is an unimportant part and can be retrieved by Shiho Miyano alone. Hearing Shinchi's words, Shiho Miyano showed an unexpected look. You may not know that the retrieval of core data requires 2 people with the highest authority. Shinyan didn't say anything, he just showed the card with pure black background in his hand, and the front of the card was printed with mezcal in silver ink. There is also a similar card by Shiho Miyano, which says Sherry. The code name of mezcal is very strange, she has never heard of it before. After all, he has grown up in the organization since he was a child, and Shiho Miyano thinks he has a fairly good understanding of the organization. However, an unfamiliar senior member suddenly appeared in front of him, with a level of authority at least equal to that of Jin. This gave her a better understanding of the profound foundation of the organization. It seems that what she has learned is probably just the tip of the iceberg of this huge organization. The blood sample just now is human red blood cells. I don't think I can get it wrong. On the way to the database, reading www.yukansha.com, Zinfan put forward his own conjecture, since it is not a human body test, is it just a simple blood test? That was not an organized experiment, I was just curious about it myself. Shiho Miyano said coldly, obviously not going to explain this issue in detail. All red blood cells age and die at an almost impossible rate. This phenomenon is indeed strange. How did you do it? I don't know the reason, it's still under study. That's it. Zinfan, as if he was really attracted by the research content, quickly ended the topic. It's just that he himself knew that the blood sample was probably processed by APTX 4869. Shinshige and Shiho Miyano swiped their cards at the same time. After the system checked that there was no abnormality, the database door opened. Just by connecting to the computer, he can retrieve the core information he wants. In the process of finding and retrieving Nobuhiro, Shiho Miyano kept standing beside him with his arms around. What do you want this information for? As soon as the words were spoken, Shiho Miyano knew that he was talking too much. Forget it, you don't need to tell me. APTX 4869 has undergone thousands of human trials. Shiho Miyano was stunned. What did you say? Zinfan opened a form and gave her the position in front of the screen. The research and development of the APTX series of drugs began 50 years ago, and the previous Silver Bullet was the most successful failure of APTX. If I remember correctly, the developers of Silver Bullet, Mr. and Mrs. Miyano, are your parents. What do you want to say? Shiho Miyano stared at the man closely, his voice finally no longer calm. Asano Nobuhira's expression is extremely indifferent, as if the poison that can kill people invisible is like a cold medicine to him. Against the backdrop of Shiho Miyano's failure, his eyes became more and more indifferent. From the beginning, the organization did not intend to test step by step. Mice is indeed convenient as a test product, but if you want to know the true effect of the drug, human trials are required. So far, the APTX series of drugs have been tested thousands of times in humans. And the mortality rate is 100%. Zinfan emphasized. Shiho Miyano didn't hold back, she reached out and swiped the form, looking at the first row. Names passed through her mind like a movie projector, and each name represented an innocent life that died under the drug she was studying. Her hands began to tremble, and the mouse could not be held steady. Wait. Shiho Miyano's attention was suddenly attracted by one of the lines, Kudo Shinichi, why is his state unknown? Zinfan glanced at it and said, this is handled by Jin, and I don't know the specifics. But since it is unknown, it means that the body has not been found. After all, APTX 4869 is not even a successful failed product. Just a poison, Right. That's right. Shihomayano did not tell Shinhana about the weird situation that had happened to the mice. In the subconscious, she always felt that aptX 4869 can make the experiment body smaller. Xinfan organizes the necessary information, saves it in the disk, then exits the system, and shuts down the computer in the database. In addition, I need a set of aptX 4869. Shihomayano's face changed. You want to kill people with it? Don't you think this method of killing without leaving a trace is useful? Shinshige turned his head and looked at Shihomayano with inquiring eyes. Why, your ridiculous sympathy has overflowed. Hey, why do I have that kind of weak mentality? I just want to remind you that according to the content of the form, I am afraid that all the usage of aptX 4869 must be registered. I will register. Even if Shihomayano didn't want to be an indirect murderer at all, she couldn't disobey the organization's orders too obviously. She walked to the cabinet with medicines coldly, swiped the card to take out a box, and handed it to Xinfan. However, no matter how sensible she was, she couldn't help but say, there is no progress in drug research. From a scientific point of view, there is no need to continue human trials. Xin became a bit more awkward, and said, do you think that taking medicine or being hit in the head by a bullet, which method of death is more comfortable? Shihomayano was stunned. She raised her head and stared at Xinyan in a daze, her mouth opened and closed, her throat dumb. Xinfan smiled when he saw it, but the smile was so cold, so you don't have to be guilty. This is the gospel of those who are mortal. Sophistry. Shihomayano lowered his head with a sad expression. I was the murderer who worked out that drug. Shinchich's figure has disappeared in the elevator. The number on the elevator kept getting smaller and soon reached 2F. But Shihomayano's sight was still concentrated on the elevator, immersed in his own world for a long time. Drove away from Qinggang Biotechnology Co., Limited, Xinfan planned to go directly to an underground safe house organized nearby, where he stored a batch of ammunition supplies, and planned to pick up some and transfer them to the dark room in the apartment. Only when the car was driving on the road, Shinshige saw a familiar figure Kogoro Mori in the rear-view mirror. Mori Kogoro is wearing sunglasses, leaning against the telephone pole, holding an open newspaper in his hand. Such an image will tell you who you are following at a glance. I think that it is probably still in the early stage of the plot of Detective Conan. Uncle Maori has received many tracking and investigation commissions of looking for cats, dogs, and mistresses. No, it should be said that these unnutritious commissions are the main work of detectives anytime. After all, not everyone is surrounded by pupils of death. Xinyan slowed down the speed of the car deliberately, and saw clearly what Mori Kogoro was following. The man is wrapped in a light grey long trench coat. He has a beard that takes up half of his face. He also wears a pair of black sunglasses on his eyes, plus a grey beret above his forehead. It's really strange how you look at it, as if he has done something bad, or has been on the police's most wanted list. This strange dress made Xinfan pay special attention to it, but he didn't take it seriously either. Even if it is an impending case, Conan will be perfectly resolved in the end anyway. He really has no meaning to worry about the Grim Reaper elementary school student. The silver Maserati stopped steadily near the safe house. After Xinfan entered his fingerprints and pupils, he successfully opened the secret door and walked into this one of the dozens of safe houses organized in Tokyo. There are about 200 square meters here, with a total of 4 rooms, the middle of which is the lounge, and there is also a medical room and weapons storage. Xinfan found the things he had stored here before, including pistols, sniper rifles, shotguns, grenades, bombs, smoke bombs, etc., and even several high-tech products among them. He packed them all in an opaque tennis bag, and then sat on the sofa board. Xinfan took out his mobile phone and entered a string of email addresses. Mezcal, I need a group of snipers to assist in the operation. The reply email will arrive soon. MP, Chianti, Cohen. They will fully obey your arrangements in the near future. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com seconds back. Could it be said that the adult was so bored that he kept his cell phone waiting for mail? But thinking about it is not unreasonable. After all, the winery recognizes that the busiest thing is Jin, but even so, there is still time for Jin to watch operas and movies. With a heavy tennis bag on his back, Zinfan left the safe house in a low-key manner, and drove a long circle around Miwako before returning home. This is a habit he has cultivated in organizing undercover for many years. After all, no one can guarantee that there will never be a hidden danger around him. 20 minutes later, Zinfan's cell phone rang. At a glance, it was Jin. "What's the matter?" Zinfan put the phone in her ear, and took a wine glass from the wine cabinet by the way. "Chianti and Cohen were assigned to you by that gentleman." Jin's tone was very calm, and he couldn't hear the emotions. However, his subordinates were intercepted, and he obviously couldn't participate in the action in Tokyo. This feeling is probably quite aggrieved. "Well, I don't have a sniper who can help with stalking." Zinfan poured half of the Scotch whiskey he had previously drunk into the glass and added a ball of ice. "Since you poached Chianti and Cohen, then you will help me with Miyano Akimi's affairs. Do you need a sniper to deal with a little mouse that doesn't even have a code name?" The voice of Jin Wine showed a chill. "I won't give the mouse any chance of escape." "Why, you don't want it?" "I didn't say that." Xinyan looked at the movement outside the glass window, took a sip of whiskey and said, "After all, I will inevitably cooperate with you in future operations in Japan. This time, it's the right to run in. I will notify you before the action starts, so that's it." Xinyan's call was cut off mercilessly again. Everything seems to be following the trajectory set by Zinfan. Jin is cautious and suspicious by nature, no matter what action he will arrange be in advance. In the original roller coaster killings, just to ensure the smooth cooperation, Jin would ride a roller coaster with vodka in advance to check the situation of the transaction location. Chianti and Cohen were deployed around early and monitored at any time. Jin is really a very dangerous enemy, obviously powerful but overly cautious. It was precisely because of this caution that Jin discovered Kudo Shinichi's eavesdropping and shut down in time. And his only miscalculation is probably because he misestimated the efficacy of APTX 4869. So Nobuhiro speculated that Jin must also need the cooperation of the sniper in the distance when dealing with Akimi Miyano. Once the target cannot be solved hidden, the role of the sniper will be essential. Even Zinfan knows this very well, let alone Jin. He deliberately applied to the boss for the cooperation of the sniper team, in order to remove the only sniper team in Tokyo from Jinju. In this way, no matter whether Jin borrows someone from him or directly asks for assistance, Shinfan can guarantee that he has a reasonable reason to participate in the action against Akimi Miyano. Akimi Miyano must be rescued, not because she is one of the future heroines, Ai Huira, who is also the sister of Shiho Miyano. More importantly, she is still the lover who makes Akai Hideichi feel guilty. Under the design of that gentleman, the undercover identity of Shinfan Scotch whiskey was exposed. The gentleman specifically emphasized that the body should be kept intact and handed over to Rum for disposal. In this kind of situation where he would get in with a little carelessness, Akai still chose to trust him, even telling Xinyan his real name. This kind of trust and rescue on the brink of death made Zinfan remember until now. Even if Scotch whiskey has become mezcal and Shoki Akai has left the organization, he will always remember this kindness. In that case, helping Akai Hideichi to save someone is not so difficult. What's more, even if Zinfan is a Japanese police undercover agent, he should try his best to save people without revealing himself. "Ah, are you here to monitor the progress of the renovation?" Mao Lilan's voice pulled Zinfan's thoughts back from unknown place. He smiled gently at the girl, and then said, "Yes, it was messy yesterday, and the walls have been painted today. According to this schedule, the music classroom can be opened by the end of the month." I am really looking forward to it. I will recommend people I know to come to class. Thank you, Morrison. Then Zinfan noticed that the Morris office on the second floor was turned off. Is Mr. Morris away? Morlan frowned in distress and said, Dad went out early in the morning, as if there was a commission to worry about all the time. If Mr. Asano has something to ask him, I can tell him on his behalf. It's not an important thing, I'll come back another day. Zinfan bid farewell politely and left the music classroom under renovation. It is true to monitor the progress of the renovation, but taking the opportunity to contact the protagonist group is his ultimate goal. After all, anyone who has understood the plot knows that if you believe in Conan, you will live forever. But, it's another commission. Such a high-intensity and high-density commission made Zinfan unconsciously think of an event in more than 1,000 concentrations. Or you should go around here and see how your luck is. Shinyan pays close attention to the dynamics of the people around him, looking for Kogoro Mori among them, while still not forgetting his work. He dials a series of unrecorded numbers on his mobile phone. Hey, it's me. Can I trouble you? Mori Kogoro appeared between the bookshelves of a bookstore. Zinfan pretended to be a normal guest and walked in casually. Following the sight of Uncle Maori, he quickly locked a person. Well, I'm still an acquaintance. Obviously, the object Mori Kogoro is following is the one Shinshige saw yesterday. He was still dressed as he remembered, wrapped tightly all over his body. Shinyan just hung up the phone. He used his peripheral vision to pay attention to the movement of tracking the target, and skillfully took off the phone card under his hand, broke it and threw it into the trash can. There are many such calling cards that he loses after one call, just like that guy's dominant hand, which is a daily disposable type. Yes, Zinfan quickly discovered something was wrong. The target of the Uncle Maori, his dominant hand changed from the right hand to the left hand inexplicably today. If you are not a master of second sword art, it also means. The keenness cultivated undercover all the year round tells Zinfan that there is a taste of conspiracy in it. While at the Ministry of Public Security, Yuya Kazemi, who was diligently clocking into work, just made a cup of coffee and was about to catch his breath when his cell phone rang. The caller was from a boss that he didn't usually reach at all. Hey! Feng Jian's voice trembled, and he wondered if he did not do well enough that he would be asked to talk. Is it because there is a problem with the work of the Zero Group? Otherwise, how could such a high-level leader personally talk? Ah, don't let Mr. Yutani expose it. That is the only hope of the Japanese police. Fortunately, on the other side, I didn't give the wind too much time to think about it. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com otherwise doesn't know what kind of plot he will make up. You recently found a prisoner, preferably the one who has been sentenced to death and has not yet been executed. Female, about 165 centimeters, of medium and thin body. The leader over there reminded him, don't disturb the Metropolitan Police Department. Ah? Good, okay. Feng Jian hadn't recovered from his brain, and he was a little dazed after subconsciously responding. What does the police want to execute prisoners? The leader thought for a while, still not at ease, and added, don't tell Zhang Guling about this. To be precise, it should be that as long as I personally contact you or other people in the future, I don't have to tell the Zero team. This point is very important. Although he didn't understand the reason, Feng Jian nodded his head. I understand, please rest assured. Think about it, the leaders of the police are still very caring. Knowing that Mr. Yutani's current situation is no different from walking on the tip of a knife, it is very dangerous. Therefore, these less important things should disturb him as little as possible to reduce the risk of Mr. Noria's exposure. After all, the police learned from Mr. Zhu Fu's painful experience of being stained red with blood, and applied it to Mr. Zhang Gu. It's a pity that Mr. Zhu Fu sacrificed himself to the undercover job at a young age. Speaking of, why after Mr. Zhu Fu died, the Japanese police not only did not posthumously honor him, but deleted all his information? It's hard not to chill the soldiers who are desperate for national security. I'm afraid Mr. Yutani also has opinions on the above decision in his heart. Feng Jian silently complained, while secretly making a note in his notebook. After seeing that guy perform the routine operation of changing his dominant hand overnight, Xin Fan realized which case this was. This kind of sensitivity to the case is also thankful for the days when he had just realized that he had crossed into the dangerous world of Conan, and was deliberately consolidating the plot all the time. It's just that, knowing that, he can even guess the identity of the victim. However, there is no meaning or necessity to help. Even if he can stop this time, as long as the contradictions and the interests of money are still there, murder is impossible to prevent. Shinshige admits that he is not that kind of good old man, his own affairs are still messed up, and his plan to save Miyano Akemi is not perfect. If he still worry about others in this situation, then he is really boring to the extreme. What's more, follow Conan to follow the plot, isn't it fragrant? Xinyan counted the time and knocked on the door of the Maori detective office. Here, Mori Detective Agency. It was Mori Ran who opened the door. Ah, it's Mr. Asano. Hey, this kind of work is really easy, stalking a man for 3 days has 500,000. Zinfan heard the laughter of Uncle Maori before he even entered the door. He looked in the direction of the voice, and the uncle was actually counting money. Dad! Please restrain yourself a little, Mr. Asano is here. Ahaha! There was still an unconcealable smile on Kogorum Mori's face, but somehow he put away the envelope full of money. Asano, come here, sit here. I heard Xiaolan say it. You seem to be looking for me for something. Zinfanyin sat on the sofa and said, well, I plan to change the lock on the first floor door. I still have to tell you this kind of thing. Ah, this kind of thing, you can decide for yourself. Mao Lilan also nodded aside, yes, after we have a new tenant, the lock on the gate should be replaced. Speaking of which, this was originally what we should do. Oh. Xiaolan, you don't know that. Kogorum Muri winked frantically next to him, people are going to operate there. Even the landlord shouldn't interfere with changing the lock. Conan smiled unabashedly when he heard the words. Uncle Maori is simply not to spend money on the lock. The 3 people present all knew what the uncle was thinking, only Kogorum Mori himself thought his explanation was brilliant. Zinfan doesn't care about this. He already knew what Uncle Maori was, so he turned the topic off. Speaking of which, Mr. Maori's commission is really high now. Even if the music classroom opens, I can't guarantee that there will be. Such an achievement was praised obviously to make Kogorum Mori very happy. His brothers patted Shinfan's shoulder nicely and said, because I have always been able to detect some strange cases inexplicably lately, ha 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 ha. Conan's expression became more and more helpless. Speaking of it, it seems that since Conan came, my dad's work has become more and more smooth. Mao Lilan bowed slightly to Conan and said with a smile, could it be the luck that Conan brought us? Hey! Conan pretended to be stupid, why? Ha 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 ha. Zinfan touched her smooth chin. Just 4 years ago, this place still had a small beard. Thinking about it this way, I really miss the past. Conan, is this kid's name Conan? Hearing Zinfan's question, Conan immediately became alert. Yes, he is called Edogawa Conan. The name is a bit strange, but he is a very cute little boy. Xinyan thought for a while, and muttered, Edogawa Ranbu and Conan Doyle? This kid's name is really interesting. Haha, I don't know why my parents gave me this name. Conan tried to hide it, but cold sweat leaked from his forehead. Edogawa Conan was originally the name that he came up with in an emergency. With a guilty conscience, he was worried that the man in front of him would guess something based on this. However, speaking of the name, someone has no right to doubt him. Brother Asano, your name is also very strange. Is it from Sanada Yukimura? After all, Sanada Yukimura was called Shinshige before his name was changed. Conan raised his head and asked innocently. Really? Zinfan thought about it or said, you think it is, then it is. What does he think is it? Please don't be so perfunctory. Or at least please put away the perfunctory look on your face. Cut, this kid really understands a lot. Mori Kogoro leaned back, tilted Erlang's legs, and looked dismissive. But how long will this kid stay here? His parents haven't been discharged yet. I asked Dr. Ari. It seems that his parents went abroad immediately after being discharged from the hospital, saying that there was an urgent matter over there that needed to be dealt with. Really, how can there be such irresponsible parents? Kogoro Mori squinted at the Conan kid, at least I should ask them for alimony. Hee hee. Conan could only laugh awkwardly and politely. Shinyan narrowed his eyes. Yu read www.yuyugonshu.com with a small smile, and said, don't worry, it is estimated that Conan's parents will send you support soon. Counting time, Kudo Yukiko's prank should be coming soon. After all, more than 1,000 episodes of Detective Conan only lasted 5 months. This kind of early plot can be resolved within this month. It's just, will this month suddenly jump to summer? I'm not sure. At 8 o'clock on Sunday evening, a charred male body was found in the high platform of the Red Ghost Village Fire Festival in Gunma County, where tourists are currently gathering. The old TV set suddenly heard the voice of a news reporter. This kind of death case immediately attracted the attention of Kogoro Mori and Conan. Verified by the remains of the deceased was named Negishi Masaki, 42 years old this year. According to the judgment of the police, the possibility of homicide is extremely high. What? Mori Kogoro immediately jumped up, rushed over, excitedly hugged the TV and watched carefully. It's weird, Shinshige murmured. Conan immediately turned around and looked at him. Did Brother Asano found something? Actually, I think there are some things. Ah, Zinfan nodded. I started using a smartphone 4 years ago tomorrow morning, and the TV set at this time is still the old version that flickers on and off. The advancement of technology is so strange. A big drop of cold sweat dripped from Conan's forehead. What's so strange about this? It's normal. He just thought that Nobuhiro Asano was an excellent detective, really. Even if this guy was suspected to be related to the murder before, he is at most an ordinary person with strong psychological quality. At most he is a criminal who has escaped outside the legal net. How can he be a detective? This is indeed the person, you can't be wrong. Mori Kogoro clutched the TV tightly, and the blue veins on his forehead kept beating. Mao Lilan asked nervously, what's wrong, Dad? Do you know this person? It's not a question of acknowledgement. Kogoro Mori stared at the front and his gaze was in a daze. It's because I have been with this person for the past 3 days. How come? Conan's expression on his face became more serious in shock. Could it be that this person is the target of uncle you have been following before? That's right. Kogoro Mori turned around and said heavily, it seems I must go to the police station. My car is parked downstairs, shall I take you there? Zinfan offered to offer. The matter was urgent, and Kogoro Mori had no time to shirk. He got into Shinyan's car and drove towards the Miwa police station. Different from Mescal's flamboyant Maserati sports car, Asano Nobuhiro's car is an ordinary family car. But how can young men in their 20s dislike good cars? Because of concealing and disguising his identity, Zinfan can only act in a low-key manner. The large amount of black money he makes in the organization can only be seen but not spent. This is a very heartbreaking thing. So when encountering organization-related tasks, he did not hesitate to show his love for Maserati. Anyway, it doesn't matter if the Porsche of Jin is towed by the traffic police and ticketed all day long. In comparison, he is much more low-key. Sends Kogoro Mori to the police station, Shin Shige waited for him outside with a wink, but didn't go in with him. Time passed by minute by second, and Kogoro Mori stayed in it for a long time, but still didn't mean to leave. Mao Lilan stared at the door of the police station boredly, wondering, why hasn't my father come out yet? Didn't you just need to make a statement? Zinfan inserted his pockets and leaned against the car door. Hearing the words, he explained, Mr. Mori had been with the victim before the incident, so he was a very important witness to the police. That's it. Conan also nodded solemnly. He was thinking about every detail of the case while playing football. I have to say that Conan playing football is a very impressive performance. Only, why is the expression of that child getting more and more ghostly? Football has been left behind by him, okay. Shin Fan silently stayed away from Edogawa Conan, who was obviously mentally abnormal. It happened that his cell phone rang, which gave Zinfan a legitimate reason to stay away from Conan. Generally good children know that they cannot eavesdrop on the phone of an adult. Although Conan may not belong to the category of a good boy in general. However, he is now immersed in the excitement of encountering difficult and miscellaneous cases, and probably has no time to explore other things for the time being. See you at the base tomorrow night, there is a task arrangement. On the other side of the phone was the voice of Jin. Okay, no problem. The letter paused and added before the Jin hangs up the phone. You can send me this one sentence thing in the future. It's not convenient for me to answer it anytime. By phone. If I refuse to answer, I will send an email. And, the Jin's voice was a bit playful, I remember you are a vagrant now. Who is a vagrant who has no AC number in his heart? He is obviously a sunny and handsome music classroom operator. Besides, the question is not whether he has a job or not. The point is that beside him is Shinichi Kudo, who can be called an organizational nightmare. Thanks to Kudo Shinichi's ability to switch on the phone, Shinyan was afraid that his vest would not be able to keep it after he answered the phone several times. Is Asano talking to a friend on the phone? Conan's height determines that when he appears, he is often scary. Shinyan said to the Jin without changing his face, now you know the reason? Goodbye. However, when he was about to hang up the phone and deal with Conan, he found that the conversation between him and Jin had been hung up by the other party before he knew it. How can it be repaired? Anyhow, Zhu Fu Jingguang is also a high-level undercover organization that has been successful for many years. Isn't it just that there is no organization? Brother Asano said, know what the reason is. Conan continued to pretend to be cute. Zinfan, who was in a bad mood, glanced at him calmly and indifferently, and said, I'm talking to my work partner and there is a very noisy bear child beside me. Ahaha! Conan! What are you doing? Morilan arrived in time and rubbed Conan's head, don't disturb Mr. Asano. More than an hour later, a decently dressed man with elegant glasses walked out of the police station. There was a successful smile on his face, and he couldn't conceal the excitement and joy in his heart. I really feel suspicious how I look at it. It didn't take long for Kogoro Mori to finally come out of the police station. It's just that it's completely different from the man before, his expression can be said to be very heavy. Dad, what's the matter? Mao Lilan asked worriedly. Mori Kogoro got into the co-pilot's seat without saying a word. Zinfan and Mao Lilan looked at each other, and both decided to leave first before talking. When the door was closed, Kogoro Mori suddenly hit the window with a punch. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com almost broke the glass. Zinfan stroked his forehead helplessly. Mr. Maori, even if you feel upset, please don't let the car window breathe. Sorry. Kogoro Mori's attitude is very good, it's just that the guy named Abe Toys is really disgusting. The commission of $500,000 is really wrong. It turned out that I was asked to prove it to him. Damn it, really disgusting. Did Mr. Abe explain why he wanted you to follow Masaki Negishi? Shin Shige asked. He said that it was Negishi Masaki who felt that someone was going to murder him, so please help and ask a detective to watch. Really? Nobuhira's eyes were dark and unclear. Mr. Negishi really trusts Mr. Abe. It is clearly a matter that threatens life and can be handled by Mr. Abe. If it was me, he would probably ask him for it. Detective. That's why it is suspicious to say that Abe Toyoshi is really suspicious. Kogoro Mori said angrily, must be the one he killed, but that guy has an alibi. Damn, where is the problem? Alibi? Conan probed his head. Kogoro Mori explained in a bad tone, my follow-up can prove that Negishi was alive until Saturday night, and the time of death can only be Sunday. But the guy Abetoyo was traveling in Kyushu with his colleagues from Saturday to Monday. Conan thought for a while and questioned, Kyushu is not very far from Tokyo. He has a chance to return to Tokyo to commit the crime. Mori Kogoro's face worsened when he heard this, but the photos of him and his colleagues in Kyushu can prove that he only has 2 hours of solitary time halfway through, and there is no time to go back and forth. This is the perfect alibi. These are the photos of Abetoyo in Kyushu. I asked the police to come over, and I plan to study it myself. Mori Kogoro spread a bunch of photos on the table. Shin Shige glanced once, and found that there were basically clocks in every photo. Well, the murderer really didn't hide his purpose. But no matter how suspected the police and detectives are, it is just futile without evidence. Mao Lilan looked for it on the table. I remember the photos my father took before are placed here. Ah, Conan, be careful. Conan was taken aback by Morilan, and with a shake of his hand, all the photos in the envelope were scattered and mixed with Abetoyo's photos. Let me help organize it. Xin Fan took the initiative to take the photos and start sorting them one by one. By the way, he could also remind Conan a message, Mr. Negishi must be a very smart person, right? Can you be smart enough to be killed so easily by others? I think the real smart person is that Toyoshi Abe, right? Kogoro Mori snorted disdainfully. Conan was very interested and leaned over, staring at the photo. Shin Shige explained as he sorted it out, isn't it said that the left hand develops the right brain, and the right hand develops the left brain? Mr. Negishi can use both left and right hands very conveniently, so I think he must be very smart. Wait. Conan's eyes lit up. He quickly rushed over, grasping the photos and comparing them carefully. Obviously he was still right-handed on Thursday and Friday, but he suddenly became left-handed on Saturday. Ah, I see. This is the truth that Abetoyo was alibi to prove. Boom! Kogoro Mori unceremoniously gave Conan an ice cream ball. The kid knows what, go, don't disturb my thoughts. Mori Kogoro stared at the table full of photos, clenched his fists tightly. In less than a week, Abe will be able to get his pen. I bought the insurance of Masaki Negishi. I must solve the problem of his alibi before that. Conan was beaten to stare at Venus and almost fainted in Mao Lilan's arms. Mao Roland's tone inevitably brought some resentment. Really, Dad, don't you take Conan out of anger because the case cannot be solved. Kogoro Mori did not look at Conan, and his thinking was still immersed in the case. The murderer must be Toyotomi Abe. Because he has full motives. His company has 300 million yen in debt, and 500 million yen in insurances. Not only it can fill the vacancy, and it can also allow him to escape abroad. It's weird. Zinfan put his chin on, looking very upset. Conan's eyes lit up immediately. Yeah, right? Sure enough, Brother Asano also felt that there was a problem. Obviously the murderer didn't want the police to find the deceased too quickly, but he took the deceased. Zinfan looked back at him, with a little sympathy in his eyes. Alas, I have reminded him before, why does this kid still believe that he can maintain the same thinking as him? Shinyan sighed and said, no, I just think that he has already absconded as a murderer, so he doesn't care about the company's 300 million debts. How can this person's brain circuits be so strange? Nobuhira continued to sigh. Anyway, even if it can prove that Abe Feng's alibi is not valid, there is no way to prove that he is the murderer. After all, Mr. Mori was not at the scene of the crime, and the reasoning he could make was limited. It would be great if Abe could confess the crime himself. Mori Kogora glanced at him, disdainfully said, "How can this kind of person take the initiative to admit it? At least he must be kept in the country as a suspect." "Do not." Conan lowered his head to think carefully. "It is not impossible to force Abe to confess, but it must be planned well. Being a child seems to be a good bait. Then all he has to do now is to attract Abe Feng to show up. Uncle Mori, do you know when Abe Feng goes to the insurance company to apply for a premium?" "How do I know this?" "Probably these 2 days." "It's today." Nobuan narrowed his eyes, facing Conan's expectation mixed with inquiring eyes, and said calmly, "If Mr. Abe is really the murderer, he must hope to receive the deposit as soon as possible and leave early. Japan. And we saw him when we were waiting for Mr. Mori at the entrance of the police station. I noticed that he was holding the insurance policy of the life insurance company." Conan quickly looked at the clock hung on the wall. The time for Abe to complete all the procedures should be. Shinyan accepted the conversation cooperatively. 9 o'clock. As soon as the voice fell, Conan jumped up and was about to rush downstairs. His footsteps were stopped by Zinfan. Zinfan said, "I will drive faster. I will send you there." Conan watched his eyes tightly, but he could only see a calm lake in it. The lake seemed clean and there was nothing. 2 seconds later, Conan chose to compromise. So far, seizing Abe toys is the most urgent thing. "Hey! Wait!" Mao Lilan hurriedly called from behind, but neither Zinfan nor Conan looked back. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Behind them, Uncle Maori was still in a dazed state, completely unable to understand what the two guys were talking about. The Maori Detective Agency is about 30 minutes drive from the nearest insurance store around the police station, and now. Conan checked his watch and gritted his teeth. Damn it, it's 8:40 now. Judging from the traffic conditions in Tokyo, even if Zinfan is racing all the way, it is difficult to arrive in 20 minutes. What's more, maybe Abe Feng had to complete the formalities sooner than they thought. However, Zinfan seemed extremely calm at the moment. He pulled on the handbrake and stepped on the accelerator, but wrong. Conan shouted, "Brother Asano, your direction is wrong. You should be over there." "It's not wrong," Shinshige explained in a cold voice while manipulating the car to turn left and right to avoid vehicles on the road. "The deposit of 500 million yen is very large, and there is only one insurance store in Tokyo that can handle this business." Conan's expression suddenly relaxed. "You mean the life insurance in Miwako Sancome? If it's too late, if it's there, it will come, ah." Because he didn't wear a seat belt, Conan unfortunately ran into a nearby car door during Shinfan's high acceleration turn. It was originally hit on the forehead by Kogoro Muri, but now it has become a double ball ice cream. Zinfan gave him a self-seeking look as he concentrated on driving. "Even if the distance is close, we should arrive as soon as possible to reduce the possibility of accidents. Sit firmly." Shinhani stepped on the accelerator again and galloped forward. Occasionally drag racing is really fun, but if you are driving the silver Maserati now, it would be even better. Drove all the way to the life insurance store in Miwako 3CHOME. At the risk of being issued a series of tickets by the traffic police, Xin-Fan finally managed to control the time at 8:52. The surrounding area seemed quiet, and Conan almost thought they were late. "It's okay, it's Abe Feng's car, I remember the license plate." Conan sighed and felt strange. It seems that he will take a while to complete the process. It is because the staff here are too slow. Is it? Wait, it's not right. Shinshige loosened his seat belt, took out a pack of cigarettes from the car's storage box, took out one, and lit it with a cigarette lighter. The smoke rose in the quiet air and lingered near his cheeks, setting him off like a figure in a ukiyo. Conan was stunned by someone's leisurely state, and was stunned for a long time before saying, "The 9 points we previously speculated were based on Abe Toy's choosing a store near the police station. But since he finally came here. On the other hand, the time spent on the road must be greater than previously speculated. You have known that waiting for him to complete all the formalities must be at least 9:10, but you still follow my line of thought and say that it is 9 o'clock and drive the car like that. You really did it on purpose." Zinfan drew a cigarette, took a deep breath, and leaned back in the car seat leisurely. After a while, he slowly turned his head back and looked at the depressed Conan kid in the passenger seat. Zinfan thought for a while, and then showed a wicked look of doubt. "Sorry, I've been too long since I was in elementary school, but, are the primary school students as smart as you now?" Conan pretended to be stupid like a conditioned reflex. "Hey? No, I usually like to watch Holmes. Hey, I always think of myself as a famous detective in novels. But still. Brother Asano is better. I guessed the location wrong before. Brother Asano is the real detective." "Really?" Shinyan frowned, but he followed Conan's words and withdrew his thoughts of inquiry. After all, teasing Conan with this kind of thing is to make progress gradually. Otherwise, if someone is in a hurry and exposes himself directly, it would be very boring. There will be a lot of fun that Conan can bring. In Conan's pretending to be so cute, Abe Feng appeared at the door of life insurance. Judging from his looks, it is clear that his application has been approved, and he will be able to get a 500 million yen deposit in a few days. "It's time for you to pass." Zinfan hid his figure in the shadows, unable to see his expression. "By the way, do you remember his tricks?" On the way came, they had already reported to the police. As long as they got the audio of Abe Fyong admitting that he had committed a crime, they could immediately send him to the police station. Conan couldn't wait to make his own reasoning in front of the prisoner. However, when he saw Zinfan, he thought of the situation in which he was suspected, and had to pretend to be unconfident. Said timidly, "I don't know if I can make it clear, or Brother Asano will remind me again." Zinfan snorted in his heart, but on the surface it was the big brother next door who generally encouraged him. "Don't be nervous, you can do it well, little detective." Conan has been paying attention to his expression. Although he can't see any obvious changes, he is secretly relieved to hear Zinfan say this. Can say such a thing, he shouldn't doubt it anymore. Conan jumped out of the car lightly, hid in a corner of the parking lot, and called out Abe Feng, "The plan is very good, uncle." In Shinchich's line of sight, Abe first paused, then looked around. Actually, the time when Negishi Masaki died was Friday night, right? As soon as this sentence came out, Abe Feng's complexion changed drastically, and he took a half step back subconsciously. Conan's voice continued, "Yes, you killed him the day before you set off for the trip. It's just that the next day, you hired a person who resembled Negishi Masaki and dressed him like him. Let the Maori detective follow. This will mislead the police and make people misjudge the time of Negishi's death." Abe Feng anxiously searched for the source of the sound, even passing by Shinfan's car. Shinhiro turned out the car lights long ago. He has undergone systematic tracking and anti-tracking teaching, which can reduce his sense of existence. But this is also the reason Abe Feng has panicked. Otherwise, as long as you calm down and take a closer look, it will not be difficult to find someone in the car. You have calculated everything so that his body was found at the fire ceremony on Sunday night, which is November 10th. By this time, his body was already scorched by the fire, and it is impossible to calculate the time of death. Then on Monday, you returned to Tokyo pretending that nothing happened. The alibi is valid. Abe Feng finally found Conan in the quiet parking lot at night, who had not changed his position since the beginning. He and Conan looked at each other, one heaved a sigh of relief, and the other with the confidence to win. "How about, am I right?" From Shinfan's position, he couldn't see Conan's expression, but just by listening to this tone, he could guess how proud Conan was now. This is probably the sense of accomplishment that the detective finally saw through all the truth and lifted the mask that the murderer carefully covered the truth. It's just this attitude. Has Conan forgotten that he is now a weak kid? Conan still didn't notice. You can fool Mr. Mori temporarily, but you can't fool the photo. The police are nearby, don't you surrender, uncle. However, after hearing these inferences, the murderer did not kneel on his knees, crying and repenting, as Conan had guessed. On the contrary, he even laughed lowly. It's amazing, little brother, you're right. Abe Feng knelt down and rubbed Conan's head. Yes, I was the one who killed Negishi Masaki. But I will not surrender myself. After all, who would believe what a child said? But I have a recording. Conan took out the recorder from his pocket and replayed the audio that Abe had admitted just now. This is enough to prove. Before Conan's proud words were finished, he was suddenly strangled by Abe Feng and fell to the ground. Abe Feng's face was full of madness, and he shouted, "Damn! You damned kid! How can you understand the pain of a company that is about to close? It's all because of Negishi Masaki. It's him too naive. I am going to kill you. Kill you." Abe Feng tightly held Conan's throat with one hand. Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com clenched his other hand into a fist and smashed it down at Conan. Damn it! Conan struggled desperately, but the difference in size between children and adults made his movements almost negligible. Could it be? Is it possible that his dignified Heisei as Sherlock Holmes is about to be damaged here? Go to hell, Abe Feng yelled, his fist already touching Conan's skin. Boom! A fist appeared in his abdomen faster than a betoyo. The next moment, he felt a great strength and pain coming from his stomach. Immediately, the whole person flew out like a meteor and slammed into the parking space next to him. Asano, brother Asano. Conan sat up strenuously, with blue marks on his neck. However, his attention is completely off his body now, his mouth is open enough to put the apple down. Shinyan retracted his fist as usual, and wiped Conan's body affectionately. Hearing Conan's voice, Zinfan glanced back at him and said, "You must know how to use your own advantages in the future. For example, if you can go under the car to record, he will definitely not hurt you." Conan. Just, too much. But thanks to Brother Asano's keen detective instinct, I can guess that he will attack me. Conan thought of it a little afraid. Brother Asano is a good man. Was inexplicably sent a letter with a good person card and smiled very sincerely. Actually, after seeing Abe Feng's plan just now, my first reaction was to bother him to kill the people. What?